Welcome back. We're now going to go to the interview I conducted earlier today with Patriot Larry Pratt of Gun Owners of America. It's a great interview. Now, Mr. Pratt, originally Alex was scheduled to interview you, and people love the dynamic of the two of you talking. However, he wasn't able to do so today, and the reason why, it's pretty amusing. It turns out that your friend and Alex's friend, Piers Morgan, is coming down to Texas. He's coming down to Katy, Texas. From what we understand, he's going to be at a gun range. I believe they're called tactical firearms. And, you know, your thoughts on that. Alex, by the way, Alex is going to try to confront them. If he can, he's going to bullhorn him. You know, we'll see. He's on his way there now. But your thoughts on Piers Morgan visiting the great state of Texas?
My imagination tells me that there may be some folks telling Mr. Morgan, boy, you ain't from around here, are you?
Yeah, it turns out he's going to be at a location. I believe it's called Tactical Firearms, from what one of the producers has told me. And I'm
just wondering if he's going to take his instruction on shooting stance from the president.
Oh, if he does, he might get himself shot.
Well, he might be flat on his back, too. My guess is the president could have done that to himself pretty easily, the way he was mishandling that gun.
Yeah, what do you think about those photos that came out several days ago of the president shooting? Do you think they were doctored? Do you think that was really him? Or?
Well, if those were doctored, he better get a better doctor, because it showed a great deal of inability to fire a gun properly. His stance was such that he would have been knocked on his backside, very likely, especially if that were the first time he had fired a shotgun. It didn't look like it was well placed tightly against him. He was standing back. He wasn't down in a semi-crouched position that somebody shooting skeet might be expected to have. He would be trying to rotate his upper torso to follow the bird and to try to pull it down. So it just seemed mighty strange that somebody shooting skeet would be pointing basically straight ahead and in such an unusual position. So I think they should have faked it. I'm guessing that they didn't fake it.
Now, you know, what is your speaking of Piers Morgan? It turns out that the owner of this facility, Tactical Firearms, at one point supported ammunition control. From what I've been told, do you think that the owner could be a psyop or just a well-meaning but naive individual?
You know, you can flip a coin on that, but unhappily, there are people who are active in the firearms world who don't really appreciate the Second Amendment the way those of us at Gun Owners of America do, or I think millions of other gun owners in the country. And particularly when a Brit is telling us how we ought to learn how to conduct ourselves with firearms, with his accent, it gets a little much, you know?
Yeah, speaking of his demeanor, and I don't want to focus on him too much because he's pretty irrelevant. His numbers are pretty bad. But we want to go to a clip real quick of Mr. Morgan speaking to various guests, I believe including yourself. And then I have a question to ask you after that clip.
Anybody that wants to make me unarmed and helpless, people that want to literally create the proven places where more innocents are killed, called gun-free zones, we're going to beat you. We're going to vote you out of office or suck on my machine gun.
That's why you're going to fail, and the establishment knows no matter how much propaganda, the Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
I think we need to ban gun control laws that keep people from being able to protect themselves.
Anybody that wants to disarm me can drop dead.
The problem is not going to go away if we ban this or that gun. We've tried that. That doesn't work. Doesn't even work in England. You've had mass murders there. All over Europe there have been mass murders. The solution is for people to be able to defend themselves at the point of the crime and not wait for 20 minutes for the police to come after everybody's dead.
Mr. Pratt was an absolute lie.
Pierce, don't try what your ancestors did before. Why don't you come to America? I'll take you out shooting. You can become an American and join the Republic.
You finished?
I honestly don't understand why you would rather have people be victims of a crime than be able to defend themselves. It's incomprehensible.
But Mr. Pratt, I haven't seen every single interview that Mr. Morgan has done on this issue, but I never hear people talk too much about the drug war. I mean, what's your take on the drug war? Because it seems a huge percentage of these murders that are taking place because of the drug war. And like a child, Piers Morgan never seems to acknowledge that.
The drug wars, I think, are a factor. We've seen some kind of substance abuse as a very common element. We've seen video games where killing becomes fun, where killing becomes instinctive and fun, and we've seen a connection also to satanic worship of one kind and another in many of these cases. So we've got a lot of factors operating here that take their control, if you will, of a person's mind long before they get to the scene of the crime with a gun.
Right. Now, the drug war, though, the video games, those are all small, in my opinion, small reasons why there's gun violence. But the drug war, that's a huge reason, in my estimation, why this is going on. And, what do you think about these Democrats, exalting President Obama for the assault weapons ban that he's pushing, yet they never seem to demonize him over the drug war, which kills thousands of people?
The drug war, and they, of course, don't want to go against the combination of drugs and video games, because video, after all, is part of their buddies in Hollywood, so they're not going to do any finger pointing, let alone at the silver screen itself, where firearms are glorified and really amazing things happen with guns that don't happen in the real world. There's a single-minded focus on our firearms. And the clear intention is, since there's no factual basis for their arguments, their clear intention is to disarm the American people so that the government can run roughshod over the Constitution and over the wishes of the people.
And they also mention, he's mentioned, more guns equals more violence, but he never talks about Switzerland, a country which almost every homeowner has a fully automatic gun or a semi-automatic gun, and yet the murder rates are so low, they don't even keep a record of them.
Switzerland has one of the lowest murder rates. The numbers that I've seen in the past were 1 point something per 100,000, actually lower than what they have in England, which the latest data were 1.2 murders per 100,000. By the way, in Fairfax County, Virginia, where Gun Owners of America is located and where citizens can quite readily get a concealed carry firearm permit, we have a county of over 1 million people, very urban county. Come and drive in our traffic, and we will convince you how urban we are. And yet the murder rate here is 0.4 per 100,000. 0.3, actually, I misspoke, which is a quarter of the murder rate they have in merry old United Kingdom, Mr. Morgan's favorite place where I'm not quite sure why he ever left.
Now, moving on to other Second Amendment issues, what is your opinion on the recent death of former Navy SEAL Chris Kyle?
That was a real tragedy, because apparently he was helping to work with a man, a veteran, who had PTSD, and something went bad. And we haven't really been told much. And I think we need to know more about what happened, whether PTSD was really a factor, or whether it was what you had been talking about. Was he on some kind of medication? Is that something that they haven't mentioned at all? But maybe that was part of it, because if he was known to have PTSD and he was being counseled by this veteran, then maybe one of the meds wasn't being used, and so when you come off some medications, that can be a problem. Maybe it was some other medication where taking it is a problem. These are questions that I think inquiring minds would like to have answers to.
Now, do you think the government is targeting staunch Second Amendment supporters? I mean, over the past month, 6 weeks, 2 other individuals, staunch Second Amendment supporters, were killed. One was shot point blank. The other one had another Second Amendment supporter drove his car off. He got into a massive car accident. Do you think the government could be targeting Second Amendment supporters?
Well, one would hope not, although with the Obama administration record of sending guns deliberately into the hands of the Mexican cartels, one can't out of hand say, oh, that's crazy. All we can say is, we hope not. Let's find out what is going on.
Has your life been threatened in recent weeks, recent months?
Oh, my. We don't even keep track of it. The left is an angry group, or has many angry people among its ranks. And once the Piers Morgan publicity became kind of a national item for a few days, that elicited so many phone calls to GOA, and people actually leaving messages about their ill wishes toward me and toward my family. I hope that would not occur in reverse if some leftists became quite notorious from our point of view. It just seems to me that the lack of civility on the part of those preaching civility is, well, pretty striking.
Now, for those who, let me play devil's advocate here for those people who may not know who you are. I mean, obviously, for those just watching right now, you're obviously a friend of the show. But let me play devil's advocate. What's wrong with registering a gun? What about those NRA members or members of your organization that say, hey, listen, we believe in concealed carry. We believe in you having an assault weapon. And, there should be no regulation as to how many bullets, you can have. But why not just register your gun?
Well, first of all, registration supposedly is a crime-fighting tool. When we look at those jurisdictions where firearms have been registered, whether it's Hawaii or Canada, the registry has never once been used to solve a crime. So the notion that we're helping the police just falls. It's simply not true. What does happen with gun registries time and again throughout the last century in Europe and even in the United States is governments use those lists at some point that they decide is convenient to confiscate guns. And that's just unacceptable. That is not something that we should ever tolerate here in the United States. It's bad enough that many people are on record having gone through the so-called instant background check, which isn't necessarily instant, and it's certainly not, as far as we can tell, being operated in compliance with federal law. Namely, the names of those checked and their addresses are to be discarded totally after 24 hours, once the check is made. When we've repeatedly asked the government, well, how long then do you keep them? Do they get destroyed right away? And they refuse to answer. Not very comforting, and precisely the reason why we're opposed to any instant background check. Not a crime-fighting tool, only gives government the opportunity to abuse gun owners.
Now, we only have a few minutes left, but you just said we are opposed to background checks, but I believe the NRA is considering that. They're contemplating that as a compromise. For those who may not know, what's the difference between Gun Owners of America and the NRA?
Well, the NRA supported the instant background check in the past. It was their way of getting away from a waiting period. And they convinced the Congress that gun owners would be okay with an instant background check as long as we didn't have to have a 3 or a 5 day waiting period. Well, our argument at the time was both are unconstitutional proposals, but frankly, the waiting period is less constitutionally damaging because it doesn't set up a registry of gun owners. It just makes people vulnerable for the time they have to wait. And as Dr. Lott has found, a waiting period increases the rape rate some 3%, while women are waiting 3 days to get a gun. I'm sure it's worse if they have to wait 5, which has been the waiting period in some jurisdictions in the past. So waiting periods are not useful and very dangerous, frankly, to the very people it's supposed to be protecting.
Now, is the NRA an organization that the American public, in your estimation, should admire, should support, or no?
Well, let's put it this way. We would be very happy if people would support Gun Owners of America. There we can assure them that we know what we're about. Since the 70s, we were set up as an adversary of the government to fight gun control. When the NRA was set up back in the 1870s, it was set up by Union officers to have the NRA aid the government, to be a handmaiden to the government, and specifically training young men how to safely and effectively use firearms. It was an experience born out of the Civil War when Union officers realized that too many Union recruits hardly knew which end of a gun was which. So the difference in founding, the purposes for the founding, one support, one adversarial, I think tells you the difference. And if you think that gun control really needs a robust adversarial opposition, then I would humbly submit Gun Owners of America is where you want to be.
In closing, do you think Dianne Feinstein's assault weapons ban bill will pass?
According to even Harry Reid, it's not likely. We don't think she has the votes. What we think is going to be the play is to try to say, oh, well, okay, we'll compromise and we'll just go for the background check. Well, no, that's not an acceptable compromise at all. In fact, there's really no acceptable compromise when you're talking about the Second Amendment. And so we don't think Mrs. Feinstein's going to get her gun ban. We're rather more concerned that she could get the background check, and we're hoping that Harry Reid is correct that even there, that's not too likely.
Well, Mr. Pratt, is there any last thing you'd like to share with the public?
Well, we certainly hope that people support the work that we're doing at Gun Owners, and that they don't even have to spend a nickel. If they just go to gunowners.org, they can get on our alert list, and when they're notified, an email will be embedded. It'll go to the appropriate member of Congress with an appropriate message regarding whatever is the gun control issue of that day.
Well, Mr. Pratt, thank you so much for joining us here on InfoWars Nightly News. We really appreciate it. You're a patriot, and we wish you continued success.
Thank you so much for letting me be with you. It's always a pleasure.
A true patriot, Larry Pratt. Well, that's all for tonight's edition of InfoWars Nightly News. We'll see you tomorrow evening. Until then, I'm David Ortiz. Have a great evening.
ProPure is introducing Pro One. All of your filtration in one system, portable, on the go. This is a revolutionary system, and I am so pleased to be able to introduce it to you. This is the Pro One by ProPure. You wanted it, you got it. No more do you have 2 or 3 filters to just reduce sodium fluoride. You have a system that cuts out the sodium fluoride and up to 95% of hydrofluorosilicic acid. Advanced manufacturing technology combines silver-impregnated white ceramic with new Aquamedics advanced media for removal of fluoride and other heavy metals, all in one filter element. In the last 20 years, companies have developed technologies that will cut out classical fluoride, sodium fluoride with a secondary filter. Because sodium fluoride and its derivatives are so incredibly tiny, some of it still gets through, so you've got to add a secondary fluoride filter onto it, which still doesn't cut out some types of fluoride. Ladies and gentlemen, ProPure for 2 years has been quietly developing this with scientists and engineers. It was designed in the U.S. They only have factories that can make this in England. So it's made in England. And this is the only filter that not only cuts out the other bad contaminants and also the fluoride in one step, it cuts out the acid derivative of fluoride. It is the only one that does it. And out of the gates, we have it discounted at 10% off with promo code WATER. This is the system you need to add to all of the ProPure systems that you've gotten from InfoWarsStore.com. The new Pro 1 filter element does it all. Water, fluoride, and other heavy metals. This is two-stage filtration in one filter element. To be clear, Pro 1 water filters, designed and created by ProPure, are the only gravity-fed filters out there, period, that don't just cut out so-called sodium fluoride, but cut out what is added to most water supply systems, and that is hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is a hopped-up, energized form of fluoride that is literally dozens of times more deadly to your body. That's what's being added to almost every municipal water supply, not just here in the United States, but in Canada, England, the UK in general, and much of Europe. New Pro 1 filter elements are good for more than 2,400 gallons, blowing away the competition. The ProPure Pro 1 is a revolution in gravity-fed filters. Take advantage of this today. It's a win-win. Support the InfoWar by purchasing it from InfoWarsStore.com. Support the broadcast and get the lowest price out of the gates anywhere. So no matter where you live in the world, it is time to get the latest development in gravity-fed water filtration, up to 95% of hydrofluorosilicic acid. No other filter can cut any of that out. Only ProPure and their new system, Pro 1. All available at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139. This is the only system that in one unit helps reduce or remove pesticides, herbicides, chloramines, ammonia, and chlorine, hydrofluorosilicic acid, the most common form of fluoride not covered by other fluoride filter brands, and sodium hexafluorosilicate. This is a revolution against the tyrants. They love putting the toxic acid base of fluoride into your water. They love the fact that it's an adjuvant supercharging the trace Prozac in the water and the hormones and the other chemicals. They love the fact that it supercharges the GMOs that you're eating. By cutting out fluoride, you cut out the turbocharger in all the poison being artificially introduced into your body. This is what I use. It's a win-win. You get a high-quality product at the lowest price. You support the InfoWar. Get your ProPure with the new Pro 1 filters today at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139.